Goad is the best multiplayer mechanic ever made, and I think the new precon with Nelly is causing a lot of players to realize how awesome a Goad deck is. So if you didn't buy the precon and you want to build a Goad deck, this video is for you. But first, if you like my videos, consider subscribing and checking out the Patreon. Thanks. So Goad, or as some people call it, forced combat decks, are essentially decks that force combat. It causes players to attack one another, and with Goad specifically, it forces a creature to attack, and it has to attack someone other than you, if possible. It's a real mix between control and aggro, which I love, and goading a big creature can often be better than removing it. Yeah, I could Swords to Plowshares your Kozilek, but if I just goaded it, then the Kozilek is gonna knock out all of my opponents. Seems better than removal to me. Now, unlike my other archetype breakdowns, I'm going to start with the weaknesses of Goad because it ties into how the deck plays. So Goad forces creatures to attack, and it has to attack someone other than you if possible. And I love Goad because it speeds the game up. I've seen so many games where players just don't attack, even though chip damage seems to be free, or they could just knock a player out of the game. I've seen a ton of players lose games that they could have easily won by just attacking more often. A lot of times it's because I play slow control decks and people neglect the chip damage and I'm at 3 life but manage to win the game. But Goad fixes that by forcing people to actually turn their creatures sideways. But unlike other attack incentivizing mechanics, like Initiative or Monarch, Goad does not benefit your opponents in the same way. Also, Monarch and Initiative are often obtained via ETB, and usually lean more towards a Pillow Fort style deck than actually incentivizing everybody to attack each other. And although you might still play Pillow Fort effects in a Goad deck, there's always going to be combat happening, whereas with a Monarch or Initiative deck, sometimes they don't force any combat, they just blink their creatures that take the mechanic and Pillow Fort up from there. Now, the main weakness of a Goad deck is that once 2 players are knocked out, you're just forcing someone to attack you. And although there are still benefits to forcing a utility creature into combat, goading a player in a 1v1 is just not as useful. So unlike other aggro decks, a Goad deck often wants to spread out the damage. You want to attack everybody evenly or have everybody evenly attack each other, so when you end up in that 1v1, they're already really low on life and you can easily knock them out. Or you try and get everybody to a low life total so you can knock multiple players out at once. Regardless of what you do, you're going to want a plan for what happens when you get down to that 1v1. Another weakness of Goad decks is Pillow Fort effects and the way it works within the rules. So let's imagine your opponent has something that causes you to pay a cost when you attack. Ghostly Prison, for example. What actually happens to a goaded creature? So according to rule 508.1d, the active player checks each creature they control to see whether it's affected by any requirements. If the number of requirements that are being obeyed is fewer than the maximum possible requirements that could be obeyed without disobeying any restrictions, the declaration of attackers is illegal. If a creature can't attack unless a player pays a cost, that player is not required to pay that cost, even if attacking with that creature would increase the number of requirements being obeyed. If a requirement that says a creature attacks if able during a certain turn refers to a turn with multiple combat phases, the creature attacks if able during each declare attacker step that turn. Basically, the most important part here is that player is not required to pay that cost. So in a 1v1 scenario, if you have a Ghostly Prison, Goad does nothing, since they can choose not to pay and then just not attack. Let's say you have 2 opponents, one that goaded your creature and one with a Ghostly Prison. You may choose not to pay the 2 and attack the player who goaded you, even though there is another opponent present. And if we add one more player, your creature is goaded, one opponent has a Ghostly Prison. You can choose not to pay the 2, but then you must attack the 3rd player who did not goad you. And here's a funny interaction. You normally can't attack Planeswalkers with a goaded creature since they're not a player. But if every opponent has a Ghostly Prison and your creature is goaded, you can then attack a Planeswalker. So Pillow Fort effects overall can really mess up a Goad deck and cause that split of damage you want to not work out as well. So be sure to pack some enchantment and artifact removal to get around those. Alright, so what colors are best for a Goad deck? A majority of Goad cards are in red, but there are some in every color. So you can easily make a Goad deck in any color combination including red, and if you really stretch it a bit, you can build it outside of red. Now the first thing you want to add to any Goad deck are Goad cards, which I would put into two categories. One-off Goad Effects and repeatable Goad. Your one-off effects like Taunt from the Ramparts, Disrupt Decorum, Spectacular Showdown, these are all great. In the late game, they're almost finishers. When the board is full, a mass Goad effect can easily cause 1 or 2 players to get knocked out of the game. But you're going to want some smaller repeatable Goad effects to use early game. So cards like Bothersome Quasit or Vengeful Ancestor, which can goad an opponent multiple times, is really great. These types of effects are going to be the bread and butter of your Goad deck. Early game, forcing players to bonk into each other, or just a one-off goad on the first big thing that comes into play. But you knew all that, presumably, right? Playing Goad effects in a Goad deck makes sense. What do you fill out the rest of the deck with? One important piece is Pillow Fort effects. Things that make it hard to attack you. Crawl Space, Ghostly Prison, Propaganda, and recently I've been testing Force Field out. This card's actually super good, but it's reserve list and hard to get, so proxy it if your play group is okay with that. But Pillow Fort effects like this work great, because when you get down to that 1v1, it makes it hard for that player to attack into you, and you can keep pressuring their life total. And it makes it so creatures that are not goaded struggle to attack you. And Pillow Fort effects also pair really well with the next section of cards I think you should include, and that's forced attacks. Something like Warmonger Hellkite paired with a Pillow Fort card like Kazul is pretty close to goading. It makes attacking you less worth it, and if they still have to attack, they might as well attack someone else for the free hit. You can play cards like Fumiko the Lowblood to have this effect in the command zone. Forced attacks, even if it's not goading, is still pretty valuable as long as you're the worst person to attack. Okay, so we have Mass Goad, Repeatable Goad, Forced Combat, and Pillow Fort. These are the core pillars that hold up any Goad deck, other than the basics of removal, card draw, ramp, and a mana base. Now when you build your Goad deck, you might want to start adding some sub-themes. Here are some examples of other sub-themes you can lean into. If you want to play the Impetus cycle, or I guess it's a super cycle now that there's more from other sets, regardless, all of these are auras which goad creatures. So putting a bunch of auras in your deck opens up for an Enchantress sub-theme. And a lot of these Enchantress effects work well with the Pillow Fort cards you want to play anyway, since almost all of them are enchantments. You can also go with a Voltron sub-theme. Let's say you're playing Baloth with a Noble Heritage background. This commander benefits from buffing his power, so you want to make him big anyway. Then a card like Duelist Heritage can help you deal extra commander damage by giving him double strike. But the Heritage actually works in every player's combat, so you can just double strike a goaded creature to get even more damage as well. Another good sub-theme is Group Slug. Cards like Mana Barbs and Spell Shock punish players for casting spells, and often cause players to want to attack you. But if you goad their creatures, they can't swing at you, and you are also doubling down on pressuring life totals. Casting a Havoc Festival while everyone's creatures are goaded is so awesome, and it will cause the game to end real soon. Before I close out this video, I wanted to mention some of my favorite cards to add in a Goad deck. Cards like Brash Taunter or Stuffy Doll are great, since they're excellent blockers and deal damage when people swing into you, so it pairs well with all the forced combat stuff, and if creatures aren't goaded, it still makes you not a great target to be attacked. Death Kiss is an awesome creature. It buffs up damage from players attacking each other, but also does some goading by itself. Bedlam is another awesome card. It just stops all creatures from blocking, which makes a goaded creature even more dangerous. Although you not being able to block anymore can backfire, so play this at your own risk. A less risky version of Bedlam would be War Cadence. It's a bit of a weird card, but it allows creatures to get in for damage. If an opponent is tapped out, you can just pay 2 mana and make all the goaded stuff unblockable. War's Toll is another amazing card for you to force combat and can really mess up an opponent's game plan. I also asked my Patreon Discord server what their favorite goad commanders were, and they suggested Aelia, Cunning Conqueror, Xantcha, Sleeper Agent, Pramicon, Sky Rampart, and Kardur, Doom Scourge, which I agree these are all awesome options for goad commanders. But let me hear from you. What do you think of goad decks? Are there any other sub-themes you use or different commanders you like? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you so very much for watching, and special thanks to my tier 3 patrons whose names you see here. If you want to be in the credits, check out the Patreon.